Hello everyone, this is Mr. Brain Junkie here, and today we'll be talking about a science fiction film called Pacific Rim Uprising. Be ready for some spoilers ahead. 10 years ago, the human race was attacked by giant monsters called kaijus when a breach was opened up by an alien civilization called the Precursors. Humanity is forced to build their own monsters in the form of giant machines called Jaegers in order to protect the species from total annihilation. In the final battles, a human commander in the name of Stacker Pentecost blew up his own Jaeger to save the human race, finally closing the breach and stopping the war. Most of humanity eventually recover from the invasions, but few of the coastal cities are still struggling due to the pollutions from the monster's blood. Unlike his father Stacker, who's a war hero, Jake is a petty thief who works alongside the criminals to steal Jaeger technology from the government. When the group finally makes it into the heart of the machine, they're surprised to find that its power core is missing, already stolen by someone else. Luckily, Jake is able to trace the signals and evade the police, eventually arriving inside an abandoned factory where he sees a miniature Jaeger that was built from scraps. Before he can finish admiring the machine, the man is attacked by the Jaeger's builder, but quickly gains the upper hand as the attacker turns out to be a young girl called Amara. Jake is overjoyed by his luck of finding this gold mine and plans to sell everything here despite the girl's protest, but they're quickly interrupted by the approaching sirens as the police have followed them towards the warehouse. Amara immediately runs into her Jaeger that she named Scrapper and turns on the giant machine, planning to escape from this place. But Jake also climbs into the robot, demanding to be the pilot instead. The girl refuses to listen and breaks out from the building's walls, running away from the soldiers and thinking that she's escaped. However, her celebration is interrupted by a massive Jaeger in the name of November Ajax, who demands that they power down and surrender immediately. Amara raises her hands and appears to give up, but fires multiple grenades onto the ground that releases a field of gas, hiding their locations and giving them a chance to run. The miniature Jaeger transforms into a ball and rolls away from the pursuer, eventually jumping into a building as they try to hide from the giant machine. Realizing that they can't stay here forever, Jake proposes a risky plan as they grab onto the arm of November Ajax and climbs onto the Jaeger's head, dropping one of their batteries and stunning the opponent using electricity. Amara takes the chance and tries to run away while the power of their Jaeger drops quickly, but soon gets knocked over by November Ajax as the giant robot has recovered already. She tries to escape desperately, but their pursuer decides to end this ridiculous chase and tasers them using electrical wires, finally stopping the outlaws as the girl shouts furiously at her captor. They're taken into a holding cell and Jake is offered to meet a high-ranking officer who turns out to be Mako, his adopted sister. She's very disappointed at Jake for his behaviors and reveals that the man used to be a pilot for the Jaegers but eventually quit and chose to be a criminal instead. In order to avoid prison, Mako offers Jake a final choice to return to the academy so that he can help train the younger generations, including Amara. They arrive in the piloting school on a remote island of China, and they meet Lambert, a ranger and former associate of Jake. The man has a very low opinion of the main character and mocks him for choosing crime instead of the military. They head towards the headquarters, and the girl is amazed by the collection of Jaegers in the facility, including Titan Redeemer and its giant spinning ball of death. There's also Bracer Phoenix that's piloted by 3 people, and Saber Athena, the fastest Jaeger known to mankind. Last but not least, they're introduced to the machine which Lambert pilots, the Gypsy Avenger and its massive nuclear core. They arrive inside the facility for the cadets, and Amara meets her teammates that she'll be training together with, but has a hard time being accepted due to her criminal backgrounds. What's even worse, her training goes very poorly as she continuously gets defeated by the simulations due to her poor capabilities of piloting with others. Her underwhelming performance makes her look even worse in front of her teammates, and Lambert questions why she's even chosen to be here. At the same time, the owner of Shao Industries, Li Wen, has arrived to the base as well, alongside with Mako and their leading scientist, Dr. Newton. They present the military leaders with their new inventions, which includes automated Jaegers that can be deployed much faster than the ones with humans inside. This will also skip the tedious processes of training pilots, which can save the military a lot of time and resources. However, many are not happy with the woman's proposal, as the automation of Jaegers would also render the pilots useless. Mako is also very skeptical about this new technology, as she believes that it's vulnerable to hackers, potentially causing more harm than good if it falls into the wrong hands. This is why she plans to vote against the company in the council summits, and she wants her brother to accompany her as guard of honor inside Gypsy Avenger, making sure that no riots would take place. Very soon, they arrive at the Council Summit in Australia, and Gypsy Avenger is brought towards the people with Jake and Lambert inside as the pilots. The planes drop the giant machine right in front of the protesters, and Jake struggles to keep balance, being rusty from the years of absence. Mako arrives as well inside a helicopter, but they soon begin to sense that something is wrong as all the birds are flying towards them as if they're running away from something big. Suddenly, a large Jaeger called Obsidian Fury jumps out from the oceans and rushes towards land, completely disregarding the civilians below as everyone tries to run for their lives. The rogue machine shoots directly at the helicopter, barely missing the target as the missiles continue towards Gypsy Avenger, but Jake is able to dodge the attack in the last moment, causing huge explosions on the buildings behind. The helipad on the skyscraper is knocked off and falls quickly towards the people below, but Gypsy is able to catch the massive concrete just in time, saving Li Wen and all the civilians beside her. At the same time, Mako discovers something familiar about the enemy's power signature, trying to warn Jake on the radio, but Obsidian Fury is able to jam the signals nearby, terminating all the communications in the area. While the Jaeger is distracted, Gypsy Avenger throws the helipad towards the enemy's head and charges in to attack, but the opponent quickly counters by knocking them backwards into a building and landing a devastating uppercut that sends them flying into the air. Obsidian Fury continues to pummel Gypsy as he throws the Jaeger around like a ragdoll, crashing the robot into the buildings and knocking them away by using a powerful blast. Gypsy manages to recover from the attack and takes out the sword from his arsenal, but the enemy is able to outweapon them with two blades and slashes at them furiously. Gypsy struggles to avoid the attacks while getting completely dominated by its opponent as it gets punched around continuously. The enemy eventually misses one of the attacks and slashes downwards into a building, giving Gypsy Avenger the chance to strike using its elbow rocket that sends the enemy flying backwards. However, Obsidian quickly counters by using its missiles again, causing huge explosions on the buildings nearby and hitting the helicopter that Mako is in, sending the woman crashing towards the ground. Seeing that his sister is in trouble, Jake decides to use their most powerful weapon that levitates numerous cars in the air and launches them onto Obsidian Fury using tremendous force that knocks the enemy onto the ground. Gypsy turns around immediately and rushes towards the falling chopper, trying desperately to save Mako and all the soldiers on board. In the last moment, the woman is able to send a message to the headquarters as she sees her brother jumping towards her using all his might, but eventually fails to catch the helicopter as it crashes down onto the ground and explodes into a million pieces. Jake sees the explosions and shouts for Mako's name, running desperately towards the fires and refusing to accept his sister's death. Obsidian Fury walks towards the fallen Gypsy, trying to finish the kill, but soon realizes that the other Jaegers are closing by and chooses to run away quickly, vanishing into the oceans. Jake is greatly affected by his sister's death as he sees her picture on the Hall of Heroes, but the man has little time to mourn as he gets called to the meeting regarding Mako's message. Apparently, they're able to receive part of the transmission despite the signal gem, and Dr. Herman is able to reconstruct the informations, ending up with a GPS location of a decommissioned Jaeger manufacturing facility in Siberia. Jake decides to head there right away, as he wishes nothing more than to avenge Mako's death and find out the real culprit behind the attacks. Meanwhile, Shao Industries has been granted full permission to deploy their drones, especially after the battle in the council summits. Li Wen orders Newton to prepare all their Jaegers for deployment within 2 days, while all the giant machines are being assembled in the massive factory. The doctor goes home after a long day of work and begins talking with his imaginary girlfriend, which turns out to be a kaiju spring that he calls Alice. The man proceeds to join his mind with the alien creature, suggesting that this has been going on for a very long time. On the other side, Gypsy Avenger has arrived in front of the decommissioned Jaeger facility in Siberia and begins finding some strange readings on their radars. Suddenly, numerous missiles are launched towards them, landing hits on the Jaeger and destroying the facility as the buildings are consumed by the explosions. It turns out that Obsidian Fury has followed them here as well, and Gypsy immediately charges towards the enemy, tackling the giant robot to the ground and punching it continuously as they fall into a massive cliff. The two Jaegers crash out from the ice mountains and lands on the ground, but Obsidian Fury is able to recover quickly and fires a powerful laser beam from its chest, forcing Gypsy into a defense and destroying everything nearby. With no other choice, Jake decides to evade the attack by breaking the ice underneath, allowing Gypsy to escape from being blown to pieces. Obsidian walks towards the giant hole to examine the opponent, only to see a missile fly out from underneath as it heads towards the Jaeger, knocking it inside the water as well. Gypsy takes the chance and charges at the enemy, tackling Obsidian towards the surface. surface and finally gains the upper hand. The Jaeger uses the plasma cannon and fires at the opponent, knocking Obsidian backwards as it tumbles across the field, but it did not take long before the enemy recovers once again. The two giant machines run towards each other wielding their swords, and Gypsy manages to evade the attacks while slashing at the opponent, cutting Obsidian right across the chest. Seeing that the enemy's hurt, Gypsy charges in for the kill by hitting the opponent multiple times, eventually managing to overpower Obsidian. The Jaeger punches a hole in the enemy's chest, taking out its power core and finally ending the fight as the giant robot falls towards the ground. Gypsy walks towards the fallen Jaeger and rips open its control hub, only to see that there's no one inside except for something that resembles a brain. They take the remains back to the headquarters, and Dr. Herman is able to confirm that the organic specimens are very similar to kaiju brains. What's different is that these materials have no signs of radiations from the other universe, suggesting that they're engineered by humans. Furthermore, after examining the inner structure of the Jaeger, the team found that many of the technologies are very similar to Shaw Industries. Herman plans to seek out Newton for answer, as the man has all the records of the company's productions, while Jake decides to warn their superiors about their new findings. At the same time, many of Li Wen's drones are being brought towards the base so they can defend the facility against further attacks. However, the machines quickly begin to malfunction as organic materials burst out from their heads, transforming them into kaiju hybrids that destroys everything in sight. The giant monsters make it onto the base and causes tremendous damage, trying to destroy all the Jaegers while no pilots are inside. On the other side, Herman has finally found Newton and desperately tells the men about the killer drones from their company. Herman thinks that Li Wen has planned this from the very beginning and wants Newton to help him shut down the robots. They make it into the control center and forces all the scientists out, but Herman soon realizes that something is wrong as Newton begins activating even more drones. Numerous kaiju hybrids arise from the oceans everywhere and begins pouring their energies together, opening portals towards the aliens' universe. It turns out that Newton's mind has been infected by the precursors after many unions with the kaiju spring, and he seeks to destroy humanity just like 10 years ago. Luckily, Li Wen rushes in just in time and shoots at Newton, forcing the men to run away. The woman quickly tries to disable her drones, eventually managing to bypass the firewalls and reboot the systems, destroying the kaiju brains inside the machines and causing the robots to fall towards the ground. The drones in the ocean near the headquarters are also disabled, causing the portal to close prematurely and cutting the kaiju in half as it tries to climb out. However, their efforts were not enough as 3 kaijus have made it out from the other portals, including Hakuja and Strikethorn alongside their big brother Raijin. They tried to analyze the movement patterns of the giant monsters and found out that they're all moving towards Mount Fuji. Herman speculates that the aliens are trying to use the kaiju's blood, which reacts violently with the elements in the planet's core, allowing them to activate the ring of fire around the Pacific Ocean, essentially terraforming Earth and destroying all life in the process. They quickly gather up all the human resources they can by working together with Li Wen and Shaw Industries, repairing the Jaegers and preparing them for battle. The cadets are put into the giant machines, where rockets are welded to the Jaegers' backs. The giant robots are eventually able to achieve takeoff, launching into the sky and heading towards the enemies. Meanwhile, the giant monsters have arrived inside Tokyo as they wreak havoc everywhere they go, knocking over the buildings and sending the people flying in the air. The 3 monsters regroup together as they head towards the mountain, but the Jaegers quickly arrive to intercept the enemies as they jump off the rockets and land inside the cities. After receiving the orders from Herman that the people have all evacuated, the team charges at the monsters all together. Saber Athena takes out her swords and slashes across Hakuja, kicking the monster furiously and sending it crashing into the buildings. Gypsy Avenger charges at Raijin and throws a devastating punch at the monster, but the kaiju is able to absorb the energies and counters using tremendous power, knocking the Jaeger across the city, barely missing its teammate in the process. Bracer Phoenix tries to attack the kaiju using its massive guns, but gets knocked over through the buildings like a ragdoll, crashing into Guardian Bravo as a result. With no other choice, Gypsy Avenger decides to use his gravity gun and begins toppling the buildings towards Raijin, landing numerous hits at the giant monster, but the kaiju refuses to go down. Hakuja tries to ambush the Jaeger, but Athena manages to kick the monster across the face and keep the enemy away from its teammate. While everyone is busy fighting, building, Strikethorn tries to ambush Athena, knocking the robot's weapons away and charging furiously forwards, pinning the Jaeger on a building. Bracer Phoenix sees this and fires numerous rounds at the ambusher, pushing the kaiju back away from the humans. Guardian Bravo rushes in to help as well, unleashing its massive whip and striking Hakuja continuously, knocking the monster away from Athena as it crashes into the buildings. Hakuja appears to retreat underground away from the fight, but the monster re-emerges quickly behind Bracer Phoenix, trying to ambush the Jaeger once again. Luckily, the cadets saw the monster coming and the robot begins shooting at the kaiju using its cannons, pushing Hakuja back as it screams in pain. The Jaegers eventually gain the upper hand and continues to pummel the enemies as they begin to win the battle. However, what they don't realize is that Newton is watching them from afar, planning to help the creatures by releasing numerous drones from inside the buildings, heading directly towards the kaijus. The machines begin to crawl onto the monsters and changing their physiology, fusing the three kaijus into something a lot bigger, eventually creating a mega kaiju that towers over all the Jaegers as it roars furiously and sending all the cars in the air. The Jaegers all charge forwards with their guns blazing, shooting all their weapons at the same time, but the mega kaiju punches the ground and creates a massive shockwave, knocking all the fighters away. Guardian Bravo manages to resist the attack and charges furiously at the enemy, launching its weapon at the monster, but the kaiju is able to stop the attack and throws the Jaeger into the buildings, eventually tossing the machine using tremendous force, destroying the robot completely. Saber Athena jumps in to attack as well, but is quickly cut into pieces by the monster's tail and thrown into the background. Bracer Phoenix launches the giant mace towards the kaiju, but the attack is not effective as the monster grabs onto the Jaeger and begins ripping everything apart. Luckily, the cadets are able to eject in time by using the escape pods, and Amara is able to survive alongside her teammates. The mega kaiju continues towards the mountain, but Gypsy jumps out from the buildings and slashes at the monster, knocking it towards the ground. Gypsy tries to hold off the kaiju by using the plasma cannon, but the monster attacks the Jaeger's head using its tail, wounding Lambert in the process, while the robot gets knocked away into the buildings. Newton mocks the human's failure at defeating his creature, which captures the kaiju's attention, but surprisingly, the monster ignores the men as it continues towards Mount Fuji. Without a second pilot, Jake has no way to stop the enemy, but Amara shows up soon towards the Jaeger and decides to operate the machine alongside her friend. To their surprise, Li Wen appears as well by controlling Amara's Jaeger Scrapper, and she brings one of the rockets for Gypsy so they can finally stop the kaiju. The rocket begins to ignite and drags the Jaeger across the city, eventually propelling the giant machine upwards while Scrapper tries desperately to hold on. They eventually make it into the atmospheres before the rocket loses all the fuels and the Jaeger begins to free fall towards the ground. Gypsy throws the rocket away and begins charging towards the mega kaiju, planning to crash into the enemy as it begins to catch on fire. The main character grabs onto Amara and tries to use the escape pods, but the system begins to malfunction, trapping them inside as a result. Luckily, Scrapper is able to drill into the Jaeger and offers them a way out, as it jumps away from Gypsy in the last moment. The mega kaiju finally makes it to the entrance of the mountain's peak, but Gypsy flies in and smashes into the monster, causing a giant shockwave that knocks them both into pieces. Surprisingly, the massive kaiju is able to get up one last time, but ultimately dies as the monster's lower body is completely destroyed. Jake is able to escape alongside Amara thanks to her Jaeger Scrapper, and the two are able to celebrate after finally saving the world. Sometimes later, Newton is captured inside a secret facility, while Jake walks in and decides to learn everything about the precursors, planning to attack the aliens in their own universe and taking the fight to the enemies. So what do you guys think about this movie? Let me know in the comments below, and if you liked my video, please press like and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys next time.